Hey everybody, this video is on some DARIMO road components. This is the DARIMO seat post. I don't remember the exact name, but I'll list it. It's the one with the braided anchors here. Go over that in a minute. Here we have the X2 stem. Haven't cleaned up my installation grease. I like to grease any bolt on the bike, and because it reduces the amount of torque needed to get to your torque value, I recommend greasing any thread that's on a bike, just because you want to use the most accurate number on your torque values, and the increase in friction from the threads is going to change the point at which your torque wrench is going to break, right? So here's a pic from the front of the bar. This is their road bar. They have an integrated bar stem called a Nexum, but this is their two-piece. Now let's just start with the bar. I like the bar fine. This bike, as you can see, is sort of like a climbing bike. I've got it set up to ride in Costa Rica, which is basically just tons of climbing, really rough roads. Don't really care about aerodynamics here, and just spending a lot of time climbing. So just trying to get a really lightweight bike. And let me talk about these components. I consider these components to be boutique components. They are not for a beginner. They have very strict limitations on how they should be used, and I don't recommend them for people who are not experienced with high-end components. You have to do everything by the book, or you're going to risk breaking them or having some sort of crazy crash that could kill you. The bar and I think the bar and stem and seat post have a 90 kilogram limit. I'm not a small guy. I'm kind of close to the limit. So it's just, and they have very low torque values, which you can find in their instructions for use. But I mean, these are the kind of components that if you exceed those values, you're gonna break it. There's just no questions about it. So the profile of the drop on this bar, this is one thing I don't particularly like. In order to set up the drop where I like it, which is, I like the bottom of the drop to be close to horizontal with the ground, or pointing towards where theoretically you'd have a cantilever brake on the frame set, in that general area. When you get this part close to that spot, you end up having a drop here. You see that drop from the height of the top of the bar down to where the hoods are. And I ride my hoods, you can see, at an angle to the saddle to support. But this drop here creates more drop in your reach, right? So if you're running kind of on the edge of your limit in terms of your drop on the stem, what could be comfortable on the tops and in a previous bar will be a more drop on your hoods. So just looking at it here, it looks like about 5 mils of drop from the top here to this point, and normally you don't really have that on most bars. So that's a bit of a negative, but not a really big deal, just something to think about. Now these bars are super flexible, and I'm never really gonna be racing this bike and using these bars to sprint, but I don't know if I can hold the camera still enough for you to see how much these bars flex, but you can see how much that's flexing, right? And that makes the bike more comfortable, right? I mean, that is taking up shocks in the road, but if you're racing and sprinting, that's not really what you want. And I don't care, because that's not what I'm going to use this bike for. I'm kind of glad it's like that. It's just more comfortable. Now, onto the stem. Looks cool, super light. You can check their weights online. But this is a major negative. I'm going to show you now. This steer tube was cut down for the height to be flush with an Specialized S-Works, I forget the name of their stem, right? So I cut it off where it's supposed to be, just below the top of the stem. Now look how much space I've got. This stem is super high, stack-wise. We're looking at, what is that, like 46 mils tall? In their documentation, they say you should not use a steer tube with less stack than 43 mils. So I'm in the process right now. Sorry for this grease, this looks really janky. But I really haven't had time since installing it to do much of anything, not even hardly ride. But I'm in the process of trying to find a new fork just so I can fix this safety hazard right here. I did ride 3 hours on it like this today. Tried to not smash into anything that was gonna cause the stem to break. I mean, this is absolutely not recommended to run it like this, but hey, you know, it is what it is. I'll get another fork when I can. But if you're thinking about getting this stem, I mean, that's something you've got to check before you get this stem. And hey, how's it going? It's thirsty time. I got this same stem for the mountain bike, had the exact same problem. Was running an FSA, just a normal FSA stem, chop them down where it's flush, and it was way too short. Otherwise, the stem's great. Probably flexes a lot too, like the bar. I mean, these components I don't recommend like for crit racing or something. These are boutique hobbyist type components that, you know, it is what it is, right? Super cool, but they have their limitations. Here's their seat post, and overall like the seat post fine. I do have to say that this post is super flexy. So when you're riding and you bounce on the back or the front of the saddle, this post flexes a lot. And it's not really the braids that are stretching, it's just the post itself flexing. And, you know, I mean, in some ways it's kind of a negative because it's changing the angle of your saddle mid-ride, like depending on where you're sitting and what you're doing. It doesn't flex that much, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of like an added little suspension here. But just, I don't know, I mean, whether that's good or bad, it flexes a lot. So it's more comfortable, right? But it's changing the angle of the saddle. It's flexing enough to change the angle of the saddle, and you can kind of feel it. So it's almost like you have to adjust the angle of the saddle to compensate for how much the thing flexes. I weigh like 80 kilos. Not the lightest guy, but the thing is flexing. Now, this whole arrangement here, you've got, again, super strict standards on your torque, on your bolts. And this whole arrangement is pretty easy to do based on their instructions. But when you're changing your fore and aft position, you've kind of got to grab these braids and slide them to move the saddle back and forth, and it's not the easiest seat post to use. When you're using your torque wrench and you're trying to get your torque wrench on this front bolt, it won't fit because the head of the torque wrench will not fit because of the post. So you end up kind of having to guess on this one, and then you use the torque wrench on the back one. Not ideal. Overall, I like the components. I'm glad I got them. It's just something to think about. Hope this review helps you all. Till next time.